Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson-Smith, Spaceflight Now. We'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. On tap for today, we have the NG-21 mission, a cargo resupply flight heading up to the International Space Station. The rocket, a Falcon 9, which you see here at the heart of Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The payload, a Cygnus spacecraft, getting ready to head up to the orbiting outpost with a docking planned for just before 4 a.m. Eastern on Monday, August 5th. However, the challenge to that timeline of the journey happens to be the weather, which you might be able to infer from this pad shot we have here. Perhaps a bit better illustrated if we pull out to our wide shot as we look at the Falcon 9 rocket from our vantage point here at the press site at KSC. Coming into today's launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a true coin toss as far as probability of finding favorable conditions at the liftoff time, which, since this is a launch to the International Space Station, is targeting 11:29 and 17 seconds. An instantaneous window for this Cygnus flight atop a Falcon 9 rocket. And the launch with our officers with the 45th Weather Squadron looking to thread the needle and find just the perfect piece of opportunity here. The clouds are thin enough, and they've got their chance to send this Falcon 9 up to the International Space Station, or begin the journey up to the ISS for the Cygnus spacecraft. Got our team of folks out here ready to cover the launch. If NASA, SpaceX, and Northrop Grumman feel like they are able to launch today. Of course, our photographers Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane getting ready to track and photograph the rocket once it does take flight, if it's able to take flight today. You can follow them on their social channels. Adam is at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. We're also joined by our friends Pete Karstitz with Max Q Productions and Chuck Briggs as well. And of course, our editor Stephen Young is running the technical operations of the broadcast today. We're currently T-minus 1 hour, 24 minutes, 22 seconds and counting. Joining you a bit earlier than we do for a typical Falcon 9 launch, since this is a cargo mission heading up to the ISS, and there's a number of things we'd like to talk about on board this mission. And assuming things stay on track with the launch, we will be joined by a couple of live guests to talk about conditions at the pad, as well as the cargo on board, getting ready to head up to the astronauts who make up the current Expedition 71, preparing to become Expedition 72. As we get things rolling here, I want to thank the more than 880 of you that are joining with us live, getting things started. If you haven't already, be sure to click that like button. It allows more folks to find their way into our live coverage, and we certainly appreciate it. We are also powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube, so thanks to folks like Butterfly, Ralph Kilcup, Florida Girl, That Opal Guy, Margaret Davis, Justin Dawson, and many others, Bonnie Long, Mel Roberts Harold. Good to see all of you today. Gilly the Girl, good morning to you. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch opportunities from the Cape here in 4K. Also want to thank our wonderful moderators, Callistia Lee, for joining with us, helping to keep things kosher in the live chat. Go ahead and keep our eyes peeled for our other mods, Astro Jen, Astro Joe, Stephanie B, and Rusty Shackelford. If you do happen to see them pop into the live chat, be sure to give them a big hello from all of us. Can't do these streams without them. And you can help make their job easier by just being amiable to the folks here in the live chat. Remember, even if this is your umpteenth time joining us for live launch coverage, every launch could be someone's first. And so you want to make sure we're being respectful and accommodating. And if folks have questions that may seem obvious to you, it may not be obvious to them. So be sure to be kind and courteous to everyone here. Also, we'd ask for you to not use all caps and please refrain from overtly political speech as we continue on with our broadcast. Thanks so much. Last but not least, we are also able to bring in some comments or questions via the super chat feature. So if you have a comment or question that is appropriate to be read on our show, we'd love to bring you into the chat as we get rolling along. And you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 20 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. Of course, the weather continues to be the item du jour. And right now, the range is currently red for the surface electric fields rule, the lightning rule, and the cumulus cloud rule, as you may have been able to infer that last one from the live picture you're seeing here on your screen. Go in and take a closer look at the pad from our vantage point here at the press site. You can see almost obscured by the cloud cover here and the rain that's starting to fall down near the pad. Again, coming into this opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron only forecast a 50% chance of favorable weather at liftoff. And that is partly because, of course, for those tracking the weather, especially here in the Sunshine State, it is not quite so sunshiny, especially in the South Florida area, as the National Hurricane Center has been tracking some tropical activity that has been making its way toward the state. In fact, the most recent update, Advisory 4A, which was issued a couple of hours ago, noted that, and I'll quote them here, depression is passing over western Cuba, expected to become a tropical storm later today or tonight, and strengthen over the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. What that means for us here and for this particular launch is that essentially if SpaceX, NASA, Northrop Grumman feel like they are not able to thread that weather needle today, more than likely we will not see this mission launch until potentially Tuesday at the earliest. Technically, they do have a 24-hour backup opportunity on Sunday. However, conditions drop basically as low as you can get. It's only a 10% chance of favorable weather tomorrow as the impacts from that soon-to-be tropical storm continue to make their way northward, heading towards central and eventually northern Florida. Currently, the track per the National Hurricane Center has the center of the storm cruising along the state of Florida and looking to make principal landfall with the center of the storm around the Big Bend area of the Florida Peninsula. That should be coming up around the Monday morning time frame at about 2 a.m. as the current track has it. However, of course, for those familiar with any tropical system, the impacts extend far beyond just the center of the storm, and so conditions likely not favorable on Sunday. Again, just a 10% chance of good weather conditions. SpaceX, Northrop Grumman, and NASA, if they're not able to launch today and they are pivoting to a liftoff after Sunday, the next window of opportunity is coming up on Tuesday morning. The reason they wouldn't launch on Monday actually doesn't have anything to do with the weather. They would need to refresh some of the items that are currently in the Cygnus spacecraft. And so they have a stand-down day on Monday for a refresh if needed. And then they would pivot to their next early earliest opportunity, which would be on Tuesday. Then we'll have to see how the storm behaves and if there's still some knock-on impacts, since the track currently has the storm beginning to cruise into the ascension path once the Falcon 9 leaves the pad. We'll talk trajectory in just a little bit. Taking a look at a pad level view, though, you can see the rainfall starting to come down. Not quite as ominous looking from this particular vantage point, but of course the 45th Weather Squadron is looking not just at the pad, but also downrange of this mission as well. So we'll continue to keep our eyes on the weather, certainly as we are continuing to roll on through our countdown and bring you relevant updates as they become available. Currently T-minus 1 hour, 15 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. Taking a look at part of the breakdown of what's on board here. Of course, this is the 21st Commercial Resupply Services mission for Northrop Grumman, hence the mission name NG-21. This graphic coming to us courtesy of NASA, so we certainly appreciate that. Just a little bit of an overview of the mission here. So you can see the Cygnus spacecraft is important because it'll bring up both cargo as well as science supplies to the crew on board the International Space Station. Again, if they are able to launch today, the spacecraft would be docked and berthed, or captured and berthed, I should say, by the Canadarm, and we'll talk about the crew that's managing that. But that operation will be happening about 3:55 a.m. Eastern on Monday, August 5th. Cygnus will remain docked to the International Space Station until about the January timeframe, at which point it will be loaded up with unnecessary supplies on board the ISS. They'll put as much garbage as they can pack in there, and then, similar to how it arrived, it will be undocked from the orbiting outpost and sent in a trajectory where it will burn up back in the Earth's atmosphere. While Cygnus is docked at the space station, will also be used in part to help boost the station as necessary. Northrop Grumman has a tradition for all of its Cygnus spacecraft and naming them after important pioneers in the space program who are no longer with us. This particular Cygnus, named after the man you see here on your screen, Sir Francis Richard Scobie, who of course flew as a pilot on STS-41-C. A lot of folks will remember he was also the commander of STS-51L. Was one of those who, unfortunately, on January 28th, 1986, perished during the Challenger disaster. And so Northrop Grumman is honoring his memory in part with naming this particular spacecraft after him. Taking a look in a little more detail on what the SS Richard Dick Scobie is bringing up. Here's a breakdown from NASA of what's going to be flying up to the orbiting outpost. You can see here a breakdown by crew supplies, science investigation, some spacewalk equipment, vehicle hardware, and computer resources. One of the important items on board is a pump that will help them be part of the urine processor on the International Space Station. There were some issues with the pump that flew up with the last flight to the ISS, of course, that being the Starliner spacecraft, which offloaded some items from Butch and Sunny in order to make weight room for that pump. So they'll be sending up some additional parts for that with this Cygnus spacecraft. They're also going to be sending up some additional clothes for Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams, who are continuing on with the crew flight test, currently still docked to the forward port on the Harmony module of the International Space Station. Finally, we talked about the Canadarm being used to capture and berth the Cygnus spacecraft once it arrives at the ISS, and the two astronauts on board the space station who will be in charge of the arrival and departure are folks you see on your screen, flight engineers Matt Dominic and Jeanette Epps, who flew up as part of the Crew 8 mission to the International Space Station, getting ready to depart in the not too distant future. As far as the breakdown, Matt Dominic will actually be at the controls of the Canadarm2 and will perform the capture sequence. Meanwhile, Jeanette Epps will be monitoring the vehicle's arrival and make sure that all stays on pace. Currently T-minus 1 hour, 9 minutes, 42 seconds and counting. Rain still coming down there at the pad, although it is nice to see some blue sky starting to break through here. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that conditions will improve enough.
Coming down on 10, snorkels are open. Main chute is on green, chute is out in reef condition at 10,800 feet.
Currently T-minus 1 hour, 8 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. Taking a look at the live chat, I want to thank the more than 1,300 of you who are joining with us live this morning. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us. It allows more folks to find their way into this coverage. Also want to thank moderator Callistia Lee for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships, helping to increase our little community here. Very much appreciated, Callistia. And a thank you to Tom Johnson for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Tom, for your continuing support of what we do here at Spaceflight Now. As we approach the 1 hour mark ahead of liftoff, the Brevard County Emergency Operations Center has activated their launch operations support team in preparation for this launch attempt coming up in 1 hour, 6 minutes, 43 seconds. Brevard EOC, one of the busiest EOCs in the country, in part not only because of course, all of the weather that we get here in Florida, but because they do activate every time there is a launch operation that includes, of course, static fires, and even if there's a scrub, they always activate in anticipation of there being a launch. So, very busy for those folks, and got a new center, a relatively new center that opened up earlier this year that supports that. Currently T-minus 1 hour, 5 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. Slight update to the weather outlook from what we reported earlier. The lightning rule has cleared and is no longer red. However, that has been replaced with the attached interval cloud roll is now red. So still 3 violations against launch right now. So while things do look a little bit better than they were earlier, we are still, if they were trying to launch right now, that would be a no-go from weather for launch. So again, this is something we'll continue to keep a very close eye on and report updates as we learn them. Of course, they're trying to keep both the rocket as well as its payload, and also very importantly, the general public safe during this launch operation, and they're preventing against the risk of the rocket either launching through lightning or launching into clouds and creating conditions where it would generate its own lightning. Taking a look at our wide shot here back at the pad, you can see some of those clouds still very much hanging around the area. Currently T-minus 1 hour, 2 minutes, 9 seconds and counting. To help out our moderators and just to quell the speculation in the live chat, just to address a point that one of our wonderful channel members, Gigi, brought up that I think has popped up a couple of times per a briefing yesterday on the NG-21 mission. The question was posed directly to NASA officials asking whether there were spacesuits for a Crew Dragon brought up to the ISS for Butch and Sunny. And we were told, no, there is not. Again, currently the plan, as both NASA and Boeing are describing right now, is for them to bring Butch and Sunny back to land in the Southwest United States on the Starliner spacecraft. And as of right now, there has not been a deviation from that plan. Currently, NASA, Boeing, and the international partners are discussing the data received from the testing done at White Sands, as well as the hot fire test done last weekend. And they will continue to evaluate such. And we do believe that they are scrubbing the NG-21 mission today. The countdown clock has frozen just before the 1 hour mark. We're waiting to hear from NASA, SpaceX, and Northrop Grumman as far as the specific reason as to why, but in all likelihood, it very well will probably be connected to the weather, as the range has been red for multiple violations and conditions seem to be deteriorating. Again, if you're just joining us for our live launch coverage, the countdown clock has frozen, and we are reporting that the mission has been scrubbed for today. Again, SpaceX, NASA, and Northrop Grumman do technically have a backup opportunity on Sunday. However, with the incoming soon-to-be tropical storm, conditions are continuing to deteriorate. There's only a 10% chance of favorable weather on Sunday. And so the next backup opportunity would be coming up on Tuesday, August 6th at the earliest. They also have range availability on Wednesday as well. while we are still awaiting word from NASA and SpaceX, the Brevard County EOC did confirm that they have deactivated their launch operations in support following the scrubbed launch. Again, if you're just joining us, more than likely the weather is the main culprit, as coming into the 1 hour point before liftoff, which would be when they would assess the weather prior to the start of fueling, there were multiple violations on the board. So the technical next backup opportunity for the launch would be a 24-hour turnaround. However, coming into this launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast there was only a 10% chance of favorable weather at liftoff tomorrow. So more than likely, there will be a pivot made to the Tuesday opportunity if the weather looks like it would be somewhat cooperative at that point. So with the scrub today, we are going to go ahead and wrap up our live launch coverage of the NG-21 launch attempt. Want to thank a few folks for their support of our coverage, though, before we go ahead and sign off. Thanks to Ian James for a $10 super chat, saying thanks, Will, and all the wonderful mods. Astro Twins, Steph, and Callistia Lee. We appreciate your work, as do we. Mitchell Wilbur, one of our wonderful channel members, with a very generous $20 super chat, saying, if you don't live here, no one can really appreciate how crazy the weather can be, and isn't that the truth? Callistia Lee, great job as always. SG with a $2 super chat, putting that in after the scrub with a ghostly hippo. Game over. Man, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Channel member Juan May, marking 7 months with us at the pad leader level. Really appreciate that. And KH closing us out with a $10 super chat. Really appreciate that support as well. So again, we want to thank our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions and before we go ahead and close things out, just want to make one final note that according to a NASA spokesperson, the weather outlook for tomorrow still a 90% chance of violating weather, or put another way, only a 10% chance of favorable weather for liftoff tomorrow. So while they will continue to look at that data through tonight or through the rest of this afternoon, odds are more likely that they'll pivot to their backup launch opportunity either on Tuesday or Wednesday. But of course, once we know that definitively, we will update our launch schedule on our website, spaceflightnow.com, and post on our social channels as well. If they don't launch tomorrow, which based off the weather is highly probable, they do have to redo the late load items on board the Cygnus spacecraft, which, according to the weather briefing, was scheduled for Monday, but we'll continue to track all the updates with this launch and let you know any adjustments to the timeline and what the plan will be moving forward. I want to thank our photographers for being on standby and being ready and waiting to support the launch here. Again, you can find them at Michael Kane, MD Kane Jr., Anna Bernstein at Abern NYC over on X, formerly Twitter. You can follow Spaceflight Now there as well, simply at Spaceflight Now. Want to thank our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of this broadcast. And, of course, we will be back with you for the next live launch opportunity. That next live launch opportunity may be as soon as Sunday morning, with a mission going up from Vandenberg Space Force Base. However, SpaceX themselves has not confirmed that launch is moving forward tomorrow. So, again, keep your eyes on our launch schedule page over on spaceflightnow.com and our social channels, and we'll let you know as soon as we have more details on all the upcoming missions. So for all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and folks, we will see you next time. And until then, bye-bye.